Do I have to go to formal night? No. Formal night only applies to the main dining room, by the way. So when you're out and about elsewhere on the ship, you don't need to dress up. And if you don't want to go to the main dining room for dinner, you can go to a specialty restaurant, which has a different dress code, or go to the buffet, another complimentary venue. So yeah, 536 days till brilliance back to back. How does that work? Do you get off the ship or do they leave you on or what? And think of the super chat. So towards the end of cruise number one, you'll get a letter in your cabin, but essentially this is how it'll work. On that last day of the cruise, last morning of the cruise, everyone else gets off the ship. You'll be told to report to a certain location. Usually it's the main dining room, maybe sometimes a lounge, and you and the rest of the back-to-backers will wait there until all the other guests are off the ship. At that point, Royal Caribbean escorts you off the ship and then back on. So you're the last one's off, first one's back on board. And that's the really 30-second basic version of it. Is there a secret to getting in touch with Royal Caribbean Dining? I've emailed twice for help, but no response. If you need help, email is not the way to go. I'm actually wrote an article about this last week about getting customer service. My advice to you, Lance, instead, now if you want to, let me be clear about this for a second. If you're emailing Royal Caribbean Dining because you want to just have I want to request a table or something like that, usually don't get a response. That's fine. It's understood almost that it's like that. If you have a question or a query or something needs to be changed, my advice is not to go through that email. Don't go through any email at all. Use Royal Caribbean social media, Lance. Probably the next best thing. Twitter or Facebook is my recommendation. What's a good amount of outfits to pack for a 7-night cruise? I would always plan on 2 outfits per day. One for the daytime, like, your shorts and whatever, and then something for dinner, right? That's usually my go-to recommendation for a cruise. That isn't to say, Vinny, you need to pack 7 pairs of shorts, 7 pairs of shirts, 7 jackets. You don't need to go. You can reuse clothing, but certainly what you wear in the daytime is not necessarily what you'll wear in the evening, especially if you're going to the main dining room or specialty dining. If you're going to the Windjammer or other casual eateries, you don't necessarily need to change for dinner. So something else to keep in mind there. Do you need closed-toed shoes for basketball court? I'm not sure they're required unless it's like an organized activity. I think it's a really good idea. I don't think quite frankly, I think it's in your best interest to not play basketball or whatever game in flip-flops or anything like that. But I think it's more of a strong recommendation. I mean, there may be signs that, closed-toed shoes, but it's not like no one's there to stop you. Let's put it that way. Unless it's an organized activity. Like sometimes they do dodgeball and there'll be a actual crew member there. But again, I think it's really to your advantage from a support standpoint to have shoes, not flip-flops or anything like that. We're intrigued by a suite. What is your must-book price threshold for a 7-day Royal Caribbean Alaska cruise in a junior suite? It's a really tough question. It seems like an easy question, Jeremy. But as an example, these are not my numbers. But, somebody might say $3,000. Somebody might say $7,000. Okay? I'm just using these numbers as examples because for one person, $3,000 is affordable, and for another person, $7,000 is affordable, and for somebody else, neither of those are affordable. So whatever you are comfortable with. Certainly the cheaper you're asking, what's like a really good deal? It depends on the ship. Are we talking about Brilliance of the Seas or we're talking about Ovation of the Seas? There's a big difference between what you get for a junior suite and the ship itself on those for a junior suite on those ships. So it seems like an easy question, and I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I also can't give you an honest answer because there's too many depends. And I'm not talking about the diapers. I'm talking about the factories. So there you go. Headed to Alaska next May on Quantum in a virtual balcony with our 5-year-old son. Would you consider upgrading? That's a tough question, right? This goes back. This is like, remember the question I just had about, what's like the must book rate on an Alaska cruise? Same kind of idea. I mean, would you consider upgrading? The money you're going to spend to upgrade, you can make the argument that it's better spent on a really cool shore excursion, because shore excursions in Alaska are expensive if you haven't looked yet. They're very expensive, especially compared to the Caribbean. And I would argue, dollar for dollar, I'd rather spend the money on a cool excursion than a cool room. Now you might, and listen, if that's not an issue, you can afford both, then yeah, sure, why not? Having a balcony in Alaska is really nice. But I don't want you to think, Brian, that if you're in that virtual balcony, that you guys are going to suffer in a sense, or you're going to miss out on anything. It's a big ship, lots to see, lots of public space on those decks. I wouldn't worry as much. The old adage that you should always get a balcony in Alaska, in my opinion, is rooted in an older style of cruise ship that didn't have as much public deck space and not nearly as many balconies. That's changed a lot, especially with Quantum of the Seas. So again, if you I don't compromise on your excursion budget in favor of a better stateroom, but if you can afford both, sure. But otherwise, you still have a great time, and I'd rather spend that money on your shore excursions. In Roatan, is it worth to get off the ship, or better to stay on and enjoy amenities? We have 3 other ports. I mean, I like getting off the ship, Lauren. Whether I've been there once, never, or 100 times, I mean, I like it at least for a little bit. So I would say in Roatan, number one, you want to have a plan. It's not the kind of port where you can walk around and just find something like right off the pier. So I mean, there's like a couple shops and things, but like I'm talking about like once you get past the port gates, right? Some ports are really good for that. Cozumel is a good example. Rotan's not a good example. You want to have a tour, but I would say it is worth getting off the ship and doing something. I understand what you're trying to do, and maybe this is your first time. You didn't say which ship you're on, and you want to enjoy that. Maybe just do a short day, Lauren. Get off the ship early in the morning, come back before everybody else does. Especially if you get back like right around lunchtime. So get off for like 2 or 3 hours. That way you get a little bit of time off the ship, a little time in a port, but you take advantage of a much less crowded pool deck and whatnot on board the ship. If I land at 10 a.m. for my 4 p.m. takeoff cruise, is that enough time? There's a couple things. There's a couple, probably, but number one, that 4 p.m. time, that's not that. You doesn't mean you can get on the ship at 3:59. You have a check-in time, and second of all, the all aboard is significantly earlier than that. My advice to you, Cameron, is don't do that. Come in the day before the cruise. I mean, try like if at all humanly possible. Yeah, I know a hotel costs extra money. Trust me, you want to come in. You do not want to see the delayed option on your flight, and now you're thinking, "Oh God, am I going to make my cruise? Is this going to actually happen, or we're not going to make it at all?" Because that happens more often than you think. Fly in the day before your cruise. Obviously, yes. If you got in at 10 a.m., like, I have no idea where are you flying into. I shouldn't even say that. Are you flying into Rome, or are we flying into Orlando? Where's your cruise going out of? There's a lot of factors there, but come in before the day of your cruise. In your opinion, do my kids need arcade time, or do you think they'll be good enough gaming time in the kids club? Trying to figure out if I need to buy the arcade credit. Here's a mistake, Nicole. Not number one, but a big mistake. Don't buy the arcade credits, the prepaid ones. On board the ship, Nicole, if you want to buy your kids one game or 10 games or whatever, you just swipe your CPass card. You're saying, well, why don't I buy the arcade credits? The problem with the arcade credits is it's very difficult to ever fully utilize all your credits because there's always like an odd amount left over. It's a problem. There's no need to do it. So I would not recommend pre-purchasing. Instead, I would just, get on the ship, Nicole, and scan it in there. As to, do you think they need it? I think my kids are spoiled enough to play enough video games at home. They don't need to do it on the ship. But we do that, one or two, like, just on a random sea day, just to pass the time, right? But there's a lot happening on the ship beyond the arcade. So hashtag that answer. But Costa Maya is one of the ports I'll be visiting. I currently don't have any plans, but want to wing it off the ship. Is that a good idea, or should I book an excursion? I think book an excursion is yeah, definitely. There's a lot of, I think it's just a little overwhelming if you try not to do it that way. My two favorite places, if you're looking for a great beach day, Maya Chan or Blue Reef, Jamie's at the Blue Reef Hotel. I've done reviews of both at RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. They are fantastic. On embarkation day, which restaurants are open? Not sweet. I don't know what ship you're on. So here's the answer to your question. It depends on the ship you're on. So what you want to do, Dominator, is go to RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. Click on the main menu. In the main menu, there's a link that says Cruise Compass. Click on that. Find the ship you're sailing on. That will be representative of what you can expect on your sailing. Does that make sense? Because it depends on the ship. But yeah, so if you're on Allure of the Seas, you're going on Allure, go to RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. Click Cruise Compass in the main menu. Find an Allure cruise compass, especially the most recent one, and that'll give you an idea of what to expect. Is there a good cruise destination you would recommend for a first-time cruiser? 7-night cruise to anywhere. It doesn't matter where in the Caribbean, Eastern, Western, doesn't matter. I'm assuming you're an American, Daniel. Like if you live in Europe, this is a different question. But 7-night Eastern or Western Caribbean cruise on an Oasis or Quantum class ship would be a great option for a first-timer. Appreciate each and every one of you guys. Very generous. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for being a part of the chat. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you all. Until our next live broadcast, have a great week, everybody. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk again very soon right here on YouTube. Bye, everybody.